Hey folks, I'm here with Chessie once again, and he is sitting on top of some new 3-rail O-scale Atlantic Coastline E7 diesels. They're made by Lionel, and we're going to check them out right now on Eric's Trains. Alright, so the larger of the two boxes on the bottom contains the E7A set, and then this box contains the E7B SuperBass unit. So for today's unboxing, we'll be using this knife. This is a Becker BK40. I just bought it a few days ago to add to my collection. Very nice. So we'll go ahead and open up the AA set first, followed by the SuperBass unit. Now, I had the opportunity to see one of these out of the box over at Legacy Station, and I gotta say, it is a gorgeous set. And this is the first diesel set that I've got in the Atlantic Coastline paint scheme. And there's the box tag. Atlantic Coastline Legacy E7A Set, 2 powered locomotives, Legacy and Bluetooth control, Legacy rail sounds, fan-driven smoke, 036 minimum curve. And I believe at some point I'm going to get some ACL passenger cars as well. I can't remember if I ordered them or not. I'd have to check my order to find out. But those are on the horizon at some point. Oh yeah. Love that ACL paint scheme. That is one gorgeous E7. I love the square windows. Very nice. There they are. And here's the second A unit. Pretty much identical to the first, just a different road number. Okay, now let's open up the SuperBass unit. Oh, and by the way, you can see the date on the box is January 28th, 2021. And there's the box tag. Atlantic Coastline SuperBass E7B number 755. SuperBass Enhanced Legacy Rail Sounds, Legacy Bluetooth Control, Fan-Driven Smoke, Rear Electrocoupler, and 036 minimum curve. And if you're wondering why it's called SuperBass, well, the name is pretty self-explanatory. It adds a lot to the soundscape of the set, because it's got super bass. And there it is. Just as gorgeous as the A units. I love that paint scheme. So here it is on the track, and man, I gotta say, this set is super sharp. So the E7 was a passenger train diesel electric locomotive built by EMD starting in 1945. The E7 was the 8th model of the E-unit type diesels made by EMD, and it became the best-selling of the entire E product line. By the time production of the A and B units ended in 1948, 428 E7As and 82 E7B these were built. The E7 was powered by two 12-cylinder Model 567A prime movers, which produced a total of 2,000 horsepower. Although most E7s were eventually scrapped, there is a single unit that has been preserved, and that is Penske E7A number 5901, which is on display at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. Now, one cool side note about the E7 that I didn't know about until I read the Wikipedia page is that an E7 was featured in an episode of the original Twilight Zone series from the 1960s. I've always been a huge fan of the original Twilight Zone series. I've probably seen every episode at least a dozen times, if not more. And kids, if you haven't watched the original Twilight Zone series, do yourself a favor and go binge watch it. There were only 5 seasons. You can watch it on Hulu, and I believe Netflix has it as well. It is a fantastic series. They tried redoing it a few times over the years, but it was never quite the same. The original series is the best rendition of the Twilight Zone. Anyway, an E7 was featured in the 1960 Twilight Zone episode, The Hitchhiker. Anyway, now let's talk about Lionel's rendition of the E7. So the AA set and the SuperBass unit were offered in Lionel's 2020 Volume 2 catalog, and these were delivered in the spring of 2021. They did these in 6 different road names. They did Southern Pacific in 2 paint schemes, Rock Island, New York Central in 2 paint schemes, Pennsy, Union Pacific, and of course Atlantic Coastline. One cool thing is that Lionel did road name specific lighting and number boards for the E7s, so depending on which model you buy, the number boards and the lighting might have a different configuration than what you see here. The length of each A unit is just over 16 inches. The length of the B unit is just a tad under 16 inches. The weight of the front A unit that has the sound system is 4 pounds 9 ounces. The weight of the rear A unit, which has everything that the front A unit has except for the sound system, is 4 pounds 8 ounces, and the weight of the B unit is 3 pounds 14 ounces. Each of the A units has 1 pound 9 ounces of pulling power, and the combined pulling power for the entire set is 3 pounds 4 ounces, which is pretty darn good. And the minimum curve for each of these units is surprisingly 0.36. Now, I imagine the overhang on 0.36 is going to be pretty bad, but you can run it on it nevertheless. On the inside, each of the powered A units is driven by 2 flywheel motors, one above each truck, so the set has a total of 4 motors. All 3 units have a fan-driven smoke unit. The lead A unit and the SuperBass unit both have legacy rail sounds on board, and all 3 units have legacy control and Bluetooth, so that means there are 5 ways to run this set. The preferred method, of course, is to use Lionel's legacy command system, as that will give you access to all of this set's advanced features and functions. However, you can also run this with Lionel's classic TMCC command system, although you won't have access to quite as many advanced features. And thanks to Bluetooth connectivity, you can run this set with Lionel's Lion Chief app on your smartphone or tablet, or you can run it with the Lion Chief Universal Remote, and finally you can run this set conventionally with nothing more than a transformer and some track. Now, if you're going to run this set with Lionel's legacy command system, the way you want to do it is you want to give each unit its own ID in the legacy system. Then you'll go to the train menu and you'll build a train and add each unit to that train, and that's the best way to run this set with legacy. There's a couple things I want to show you on the rooftops of these units, so let's go ahead and zoom in with our magic zoom effect. Ooh. Alright, so here are the smokestacks. There are 8 of them, and when the engine is in operation, assuming you've got the smoke unit activated, you'll get smoke out of all 8 stacks, which is great. Now, when I first got this thing, I did not read the instructions right away like an idiot, and I assumed that, like most O-scale diesels, you just pour smoke fluid down one of these stacks and it'll run down into the smoke unit and everything will be fine. And yeah, it did, and technically there's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to break anything, but what it also did was create a giant mess, because now there was smoke fluid in these stacks, and when the engine got turned on and the smoke unit fan came on, it blew smoke fluid all over the place. And anybody who's been in this hobby long enough will tell you that cleaning up smoke fluid off the top of your engine is a royal pain in the butt. So, for the record, the proper way to load smoke fluid into these units is to remove this panel right here in the middle, and that will give you access to the master fill hole right there. And the heating element is right at the bottom of that hole. You can't see it, but it's there. And that is the optimal place to load the smoke fluid. So that's how you do it. And then when you're done, put that panel back in place. So I had to learn this the hard way, but hopefully if you watch this video, and more importantly, if you read the instructions first, you'll be able to avoid a big mess. Toward the back of each unit, there's another panel that can be removed, so let's go ahead and pop that off. And by the way, if you see a bunch of smudges here, that's the leftovers from that smoke fluid incident. Now, this panel takes a little more finesse to get off cleanly, but with a little practice, there we go. And that reveals the master controls for the engine. We've got the run program switch, the Bluetooth on-off switch, and then the master smoke unit on-off switch. And this is what it looks like for each of the A units. Now for the B unit, there's a couple of extra switches in there, so let's take a look at that. Here's that same panel on the SuperBass B unit, and you can see we've got a few more switches than on the A units. So we've got the same run program, Bluetooth, and smoke unit switches, but then we've also got a coupler switch, a dialogue switch, and a signal switch. So the B unit is kind of like its own self-contained engine, if you will. It doesn't have any motors, but it's got everything else. It's got a sound system, it's got legacy command, Bluetooth, and it's even got an electrocoupler at one end that can be fired remotely. So if you're going to run this with command control with legacy or TMCC, and you're going to run it as part of a train, like I mentioned a moment ago, you don't have to worry about these extra switches at all. These are here just to give you a little bit extra flexibility with the B unit. If you run it conventionally or you run it in a custom configuration, you can disable that coupler if you need to, and you can also disable the dialogue sounds, the crew talk sounds, and you can disable the horn and bell sounds if you need to. That's all that those are about, but again, if you run this with command control, don't worry about those. All right, the last thing we're going to do before we start this thing up is BFIMO, best feature in my opinion. So my favorite feature of this setup is the separately sold SuperBass B unit. It just adds so much to the set. It really enhances the audio footprint, and when this thing comes thundering down the rails, it just gives it so much extra presence. So yeah, best feature, definitely the SuperBass B unit. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and fire this thing up.
This is the tower. Make a pull to the pit to top her off. Over. Yes, sir. We'll fire up. Out.
I really like the grittier crew talk sounds that Lionel's been using lately. Okay, so first up, here's the horn. Here's the bell.
Dispatcher, ready to make her pull. Can we get permission to occupy the main? Over.
Please hold at your location. Out. Got a lot of tonnage today. Better bunch in some slack before we start out.
My fuel's full. Out.
Load offered, over. Okay, well, when do you want to go for the track for? We're ready to copy, over.
All right, here it comes. Have your pen standing by, over.
Yeah, hold on. Switch over to conductor. Here you go.
All right, so we're ready to roll it out. Now, as I said before, right now I don't have any ACL passenger cars. Hopefully I will at some point in the future, but for now, I've just got some random passenger cars behind this thing. Anyway, let's go ahead and move it out. wraps it up for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. This is a great set. It's beautiful, and I'm really glad that I picked one up. If you want to pick up some of these for yourself, the AA set has a retail price right at $1,000, and the SuperBass E7B unit has a retail price right at $450. Now keep in mind, those are retail prices. If you go through a good Lionel dealer, you should be able to get a bit of a discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. If you'd like to support this channel, I would greatly appreciate it. That can be done through Patreon at patreon.com/ericstrains. I'll put a link to that in the video description below. Patreon supporters get all sorts of perks and benefits, and you can read about those benefits on my Patreon page. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my current Patreon supporters. Your support means the world not only to me, but to the future of this channel. And finally, if you'd like to buy an Eric's Trains t-shirt or anything else I might be selling, check out the Eric's Trains online store at ericstrains.com/store. So that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.